All right, let's jump right in. We're tackling one of the areas that gives CAT aspirants the most trouble, quantitative aptitude. Specifically, those questions on mixtures, alligations, and averages. Now, I know they seem tough, but what if I told you there's a much simpler way to look at them?
You know that feeling, right? You open a practice paper, you see the quant section, and your heart just sinks. It feels like this endless ocean of different problems, weird formulas, and you just feel totally swamped. Trust me, you are not alone in feeling that way.
And the usual advice you get is, well, it's pretty simple. Just memorize everything. Here's a giant list of formulas for every possible situation. But let's be real, who actually has the brain space for that? And more importantly, does that strategy even work when you've got the clock ticking down on exam day?
Well, we think that's the wrong way to go about it. So we did something different. We went back and analyzed every single mixtures and averages question from the CAT papers, all the way from 2017 to 2024. And what we found? Well, it changes everything. There's a pattern, a hidden structure that the test makers use over and over again. And that brings us to this number right here, 4. Forget the dozens of formulas you've been told you need. The reality is you only have to truly master 4 core concepts. Get these 4 down and you will be able to solve roughly 90% of all the mixture and average problems the CAT can possibly throw at you. Just 4.
So, let's get into them. We're going to walk through these 4 fundamental ideas. If you focus your energy right here, you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck, study-wise. This is all about studying smarter, not just putting in more hours.
Okay, first up, the absolute foundation of it all, the weighted average. So many of these problems are just weighted average problems wearing a clever disguise. Just think about it. Say you mix 2 liters of juice that costs 10 rupees with 3 liters of juice that costs 5 rupees. The formula is easy. You sum up the quantity times the value for each one, so 2 times 10 plus 3 times 5, and then you just divide by the total quantity, which is 5 liters. That's really all there is to it.
Now, here's a little pro tip for you. To make things faster and, avoid those horrible fractions in the middle of a calculation, try using what we call the weighted sum form. Basically, instead of dividing right away, you work with the total sums. It's a tiny little change in how you set up the problem, but it is a total lifesaver for doing quick mental math and keeping your work clean.
On to concept number 2. Think of this one as your secret weapon, your ultimate shortcut, the alligation rule. Anytime you see a problem where you're mixing 2 different things to get some kind of final in-between value, alligation is almost always the fastest way to get the answer. And the beauty of it is how simple it is to set up. You just draw it out like this, put the higher value up top, the lower value on the bottom, and that target mean value smack dab in the middle. Then you just subtract across the diagonals, higher minus mean and mean minus lower. And boom, those 2 numbers you get are the exact ratio of the 2 things you need to mix. It is so clean, it's unbelievably fast, and you absolutely need to know it.
Okay, our third core idea is for a problem type that comes up all the time on the CAT: replacement or dilution. You've seen these, I'm sure of it. A tank of milk has, say, 10 liters removed and replaced with water, and then that same process happens again. They seem really complicated, but they all boil down to one simple, elegant formula.
And this right here is the golden key. This formula solves them all. The final amount of that original liquid equals the starting volume, V, times this little factor right here, 1 minus x over V all raised to the power of n. In this, x is just the amount you swap out each time, and n is simply how many times you do the swap. Burn the structure into your brain, and these problems become a piece of cake.
And finally, our 4th core concept. This one might seem almost too simple, but it is so important. It's ratio scaling. The CAT just loves to give you information hidden inside a ratio. When you see something like the ratio of milk to water is 5:3, the trick is to immediately turn that into something you can calculate with, like 5K and 3K. It turns that abstract ratio into a concrete piece of algebra you can actually solve.
So, there you have it, the 4 concepts that will crack 90% of these questions. But what about that last 10%? Well, let's call that your specialist toolkit. But here's the secret. They're not really new ideas. That's right. Almost all of these so-called specialist or advanced problems are really just one of our 4 core concepts wearing a different costume. Once you learn to see past the story of the problem and recognize the underlying math, you'll realize you already know how to solve them. This slide is the perfect example. Look at this. On the left, we've got our alligation rule for mixing things. On the right, you have the formula for partitioning groups. Like finding the average salary of two different departments. Just look at them. Structurally, they are the exact same formula. It's the same core logic, just told in a different story.
And here's another one that looks like a total nightmare, the two-stage transfer. You pour some liquid from container A into container B, mix it up, and then pour some back from B to A. The algebra to track all that is just awful, but there is a beautiful hidden symmetry. At the very end of the process, the amount of the second liquid in the first container is always equal to the amount of the first liquid in the second container. Knowing that one little fact means you can just skip all the painful calculations.
So you see, the big takeaway here is that it's not enough to just know the formulas. You have to start thinking like the people who actually write the exam questions. It's all about developing a strategy and focusing on what really truly matters. And if you need proof, here it is. This is the data from our analysis of the last 8 years of CAT papers. It shows a very clear pattern. Look at how often weighted average and replacement problems come up. It's incredibly high. Alligation is pretty common too. But those really specific topics you might spend weeks on, like density mixtures, they almost never appear. Your study plan should reflect this reality. Put your energy where you'll get the points. So the end goal here is to build mental triggers. Think of them like heuristics or little mental shortcuts. You want to train your brain so that when it sees a certain phrase in a problem, it instantly knows which tool to grab from your toolkit. No hesitation. And it works just like this. You're reading a problem and you see the words repeated removal and replacement. Your brain shouldn't even have to think. It should just immediately go to the replacement formula. You see a problem that's about mixing two things to get a mean value, and you should instantly start drawing out the alligation diagram. This is how you build both speed and confidence for exam day.
So as you go forward with your prep, this is the one question you really need to ask yourself. Are you going to study harder, trying to cram every single formula you can find into your head? Or are you going to study smarter by mastering the core patterns that actually show up on the test? The choice, of course, is yours. Thanks for tuning in, and all the best.